Some people don't walk into rooms. They enter cautiously, like they're stepping onto a stage. They're not thinking about the conversation. They're thinking about how they look, how they sound, how they're being perceived. Scanning faces, reading micro-expressions, trying to predict reactions before they happen. Not because they're vain, but because they're afraid. Afraid of being judged. If this is you, you probably know how exhausting it is. You don't just live, you perform, you rehearse what you're going to say. You edit yourself mid-sentence. You replay moments in your head long after they're over, wondering if you said something wrong, looked weird, sounded awkward, or made a bad impression. And the worst part, most people have no idea you're doing this. People who fear being judged often look calm on the outside, even confident, but inside, their nervous system is always on, always alert, always trying to avoid danger. Because judgment doesn't feel like an opinion to you, it feels like a threat. This fear usually doesn't come from nowhere, it's learned. Somewhere in your life, you were criticized, embarrassed, compared, laughed at, misunderstood, or emotionally dismissed. And your brain remembered. It learned that being seen could hurt, so now, every time you're visible, speaking, sharing, posting, expressing, existing, you feel exposed. Psychologically, fear of judgment is a form of social hypervigilance. Your brain is trying to protect you from emotional pain by scanning for it in advance. It wants to prevent humiliation, rejection, and shame before they happen, so it keeps you alert. It tells you to be careful, to be polite, to be agreeable, to not stand out, to not say too much, to not be too real, because being real feels risky. People who fear being judged often confuse visibility with vulnerability. You feel like if people really saw your thoughts, your feelings, your flaws, your weirdness, they would reject you. So you hide. Not physically. Emotionally, you filter yourself. You soften your opinions. You hold back your excitement. You downplay your pain. You become neutral. And neutral feels safer, but it also feels empty. You might feel like no one truly knows you. Not because they wouldn't care, but because you don't let them see you. And that creates a quiet kind of loneliness. You might be surrounded by people, and still feel unseen. Not because they ignore you, but because you're hiding. People who fear judgment often grew up in environments where mistakes were punished, not understood, where being different led to ridicule, where vulnerability wasn't safe, where love felt conditional. So you learned to adapt. You learned how to be acceptable. And acceptance became more important than authenticity. You might struggle with expressing opinions. You might avoid conflict at all costs. You might agree with things you don't actually agree with. You might laugh at things you don't find funny. Not because you're fake, but because you're scared. You don't want to be disliked. You don't want to be. It's misunderstood. You don't want to be labeled. You don't want to be judged. So, you make yourself small. And when you make yourself small long enough, you forget how big you actually are. Fear of judgment can turn into self-censorship. Start editing your personality. You become less expressive, less spontaneous, less honest. Not because you don't have thoughts, but because you don't trust them. You might doubt your intelligence, your humor, your worth. You might ask yourself, am I normal? Am I weird? Am I too much? Am I not enough? And that inner questioning never stops. You might even feel embarrassed for existing, for taking up space, for being noticed, for speaking, for feeling. That's not insecurity. That's trauma-shaped awareness. You might feel like everyone is watching you even when they're not. Like every move you make is being evaluated. Like you're under a microscope. But most people are too busy worrying about themselves. Your brain just doesn't believe that. Because it learned that attention equals danger, so it tries to make you invisible. You might also struggle with decision-making. Not because you don't know what you want, but because you're afraid of being judged for what you choose. You might avoid risks, avoid changes, avoid trying. Because what if you fail? What if people laugh? What if they judge you? So you stay in familiar discomfort. Because unfamiliar possibility feels terrifying. People who fear being judged often hold themselves to impossible standards. You want to be perfect, or at least not wrong. You might obsess over small mistakes, overanalyze interactions. Carry embarrassment long after others forgot. Because shame lingers, shame sticks, and shame whispers, you are not enough. You might feel like you have to earn your right to exist, to be liked, to be respected, to be included, so you perform. And performance is exhausting. Living under fear of judgment is like carrying a mirror everywhere. You're always trying to see yourself through other people's eyes. But the problem is, you can never really know what they're thinking, so your mind fills in the blanks, and it's rarely kind. You assume people are judging you, critiquing you, laughing at you, analyzing you, but most of that is projection, not of reality, but of your own inner critic, because fear of judgment often comes from internal judgment. You judge yourself first, and then assume everyone else does too, and that's heartbreaking, because you become both the prisoner and the guard. You lock yourself in, and then convince yourself it's for safety, but safety that costs you your identity isn't safety. It's a cage. Fear of judgment doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been hurt. It means you learned that being visible was dangerous. It means you adapted. And adaptation is intelligence, but it doesn't have to be permanent. Healing doesn't mean you stop caring what people think. It means you stop letting it define you. It means learning that not everyone will like you. And that's okay. Some people won't understand you. Some people will misjudge you. Some people will project onto you, and that's not your responsibility. Your job is not to be palatable, it's to be real. The more you hide, the more invisible you feel. The more you perform, more disconnected you become. But the more you allow yourself to be seen perfectly, awkwardly, honestly, the more free you feel. Yes, some people will judge you. They always will. But the ones who matter won't. And the ones who judge you were never meant to hold you. You don't need universal approval. You need self-acceptance. And that's harder, but it's real. So if you fear being judged, ask yourself something. What parts of me am I hiding? Who would I be if I wasn't afraid of opinions? What would I say, wear, try, express, feel? What would I do differently? Because the life you want isn't behind confidence. It's behind permission. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to be human. Permission to be seen. You don't have to impress. You don't have to perform. You don't have to shrink. You're allowed to exist without justification, and the right people will meet you there. Not in perfection, but in truth. And truth is always more powerful than approval. So maybe today, instead of asking what will they think, try asking what do I feel? And listen, that's where your freedom begins.